Hi, all. This is Dr. J, broadcasting live, streaming live from Long Island, New York. It's good to see you all again. I have an interesting title for my vlog this evening, and that is why Gern, a subtitle, I should say, why Gern is a more likely buyout today than it was yesterday. And I'm going to try to explain my reasons, and maybe by trying to explain my reasons, better understand them myself. So let's go back to a couple of weeks ago when all we had going for us was the investors conference as the main evidence of a positive continuation decision. And it looked like a very rational point of view that this was evidence of a positive decision. It skewed the odds in my mind from 50-50 to at least 60-40, 70-30 in favor of a positive continuation decision. So up until the investors conference and even the day of, when we saw that the slide containing imetelstat was on it, we were very optimistic that we would hear from the investors conference that the decision has been made to continue the trials. That didn't quite happen, but instead we learned that there's from Janssen, I think head of research and development, global head, we heard that there was an unmet need in MF and that they were studying the data to evaluate whether they were going to go ahead or not. Well, that may be, but I have a feeling, a hunch, that there's more to it than that. Of course, I'm just theorizing. What do I actually put the odds of a continuation decision at today? Probably 60-40, but I think the odds of a buyout have increased from maybe 3-to-1 shot to about a 2-to-1 shot. That's all. I don't know where to begin. Let me begin with why I think it's only 2-to-1 that a buyout is in the offing. The main reason, believe it or not, is that Gern doesn't have a reason to exist other than to collect a check from Janssen, collect a series of checks from Janssen every time a milestone is hit, and eventually from royalties from imetelstat. So we're just sitting there waiting to get our share as shareholders, whether it be in the form of increased stock prices or maybe ultimately even a dividend. There is no other drug in the Gern pipeline. There has been talk by Dr. Scarlett earlier, years ago, that perhaps with some of these monies that Gern was going to be collecting from milestone payments, that a purchase of another company would be made or another drug. That hasn't happened. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. I haven't heard recent mention by management of that. So that essentially, let me go back to my thesis, Gern doesn't have a reason to exist. Now, normally when things don't have a reason to exist, they eventually cease existing. And that could happen one of two ways with Gern. Either they get bought out by Janssen, or imetelstat isn't what we think it is, and Gern goes down the toilet. I don't think that's the case. I think Gern has the real thing in imetelstat, and now Janssen has the real thing in imetelstat. So we're essentially paying a group of people, the CEO included, the board members included, millions and millions of dollars a year to look over our interests as shareholders in our portion of imetelstat, which is at least 80% owned by Janssen. And at least 80%, assuming that if no buyout, Gern opts in. and assuming, of course, a positive CD. First of all, let me say that in my opinion, it's at least 60-40 positive still on that CD. And just for the fun of it, let's assume it's 100%, just for the purpose of this discussion. And assuming that it's 100% that Geron that Janssen will continue, what is the likelihood that they will make an offer now for imetelstat? Well, if the data is really good, if it's as good as for MF as it was in the small sample space back when in the days of the Mayo Clinic, then I think it's a no-brainer. I think Janssen through J&J is compelled to make an offer rather than continue this silliness of having an albatross called Geron hanging around its neck. Now, it's also, unfortunately for us, or we shareholders, I'm not sure which is grammatically correct, we don't feel like an albatross, but we're not in a position of strength in terms of a buyout because Janssen kind of has us by the you-know-what. We've signed the rights over. As shareholders, we've trusted the good judgment of Geron board and Geron management. So in effect, Janssen owns IMED and basically could make us an offer that we can't refuse. It was Dr. Scarlett's original purpose in being brought on as CEO to sell the company. I believe that was clearly stated at one time. I don't think that's changed. I think his goal, along with the goal of management, is to sell because they realize also that essentially they have no reason to exist. So get the payoff that they deserve instead of just collecting a royalty check down the road. So what is the payoff that they deserve? Probably a lot more than what Janssen is offering. Should Janssen be offering something? I think that could be one of the reasons for not hearing anything yesterday. I think if there's a buyout in the making, there's negotiations back and forth as to price. What do you think is fair as Geron shareholders? I think I would take $25 a share right now, 25 to 30, and be very happy. I think Dr. Scarlett and Geron management would probably concur that 4 times the share price of $6 is probably a fair price. I don't know what the market cap of Geron is now. It's over $1 billion, I believe. So 4 times would be a $4 billion buyout. That's a drop in the bucket to J&J. I think it would be a fair price considering we haven't gotten FDA approval yet, and you never know what headwinds you're going to run into in clinical trials. So there's still more to go before FDA approval, and it de-risks us as shareholders to take the money now and run, and it de-risks Geron management as well. Of course, Geron management doesn't mind collecting, I don't know what Dr. Scarlett's salary is, how many millions a year it is. I didn't do my homework and look it up. Could be 100 million, whatever it is. It's a lot of money. It could be more than that. I really don't know. And if you add up all the salaries, I'm sure it's quite a tidy sum of money. Even though there's a skeleton staff, probably consisting of half a dozen people. But even so, it still adds up to a lot of money, a lot of overhead, even having a headquarters and so on. In any event, my original thesis is Geron doesn't have a right to exist, doesn't really have a purpose in existing other than waiting to collect on Janssen's royalties. So take the money and run. Give us our $25. It's a done deal. I'll shake hands on that tomorrow. Okay, so this has been Dr. J at 11, painting a scenario of take the money and run, buyout mania. I don't like to spread buyout rumors because I have no knowledge of anything. If there are buyout talks going on now, they're not something I know about. I'm just speculating. I could be far, far away. Maybe you got to take the man at his word. They're just studying the data and they're looking to decide whether to do a CD or not, a positive CD or not. I guess, for considering we don't know anything else, we have to take the man at his word that that's what is going on. But it's fun to say, what if? What if there's more to it? And that's what this has been about. It's just a what if fantasy, if you like. And sometimes I like to fantasize. And my fantasy is that I'll be 4 times richer, maybe by the end of the month. It's not a bad fantasy, right? Okay, so again, I'm going to call it an evening. I will be broadcasting later, showing the chart of Gern and perhaps the weekly data, weekly chart as well. So look for me later as I broadcast live from Eastern Long Island. In the meanwhile, I guess I should say sayonara. I guess I should say nice chatting with you all. I guess I should say bye and my usual ciao.